Alrighty. If you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap twice. If you're excited to be here, clap 3 times. Alrighty, as our wonderful timekeeper just said, this is the panel about succeeding as a female founder. If you are not sure if you should be here, you should probably say, yes, I should be here, because there's definitely something you're gonna learn. This is a conversation that I'm hoping will be authentic. I'm hoping will be genuine. I'm hoping will be something more than you can just Google or just read in an article. I think that's what makes these kind of conferences and gatherings special, is like, well, why am I here? What did I make the effort to come out here to get? Well, to begin, my name is Mandela Schumacher Hodge. I actually, as of yesterday, am a founder of a new company. It's called Taking the Leap. It's called the Startup Couch, and it's all focused on personal well-being for you startup founders, making sure you're happy and healthy, and ready to keep kicking ass and changing the world. I have the great privilege of being here and moderating this panel with 3 fantastic female founders. What I'm going to ask from the audience is if you guys can be respectful with just your eye contact, your body language. You know, it can be a little bit nerve-wracking sometimes to be up here having all these eyeballs on you. And one of the best things you can do for us is just to show that you're paying attention, that what we're bringing to you today is something of value. And if you really think it's valuable, feel free to tweet it, #tech+inclusion15. So without any further hesitation, I'm actually going to leave it up to the panelists, who know themselves better than anyone, to do a short introduction, you know, of who they are, what they do, and I'd love for you guys to actually emphasize why you do what you do. So whoever's most excited, you can start first, or whoever's to my left.
All right, I'm happy to start. I'm Jody Vandergriff. I'm the CEO and co-founder at WebDAM. If you're not familiar with WebDAM, we are an enterprise software company. So we build technology solutions for marketing and creative teams. Why I love what I do? It's amazing. Being a founder has been an incredible journey for me. It was an interesting road getting here. I started out my career in biomedical research. So very, very far from being a tech founder, and transitioned into a field called bioinformatics from research, which is basically a field that merges computer science with human genomics. And I did that for about 5 years in Silicon Valley, and then I got the Silicon Valley bug, which of course led me down the road of being an entrepreneur. I met my co-founder in industry when I was working in biotech. We decided to quit our jobs, take the same leap you're taking, and start a company. And that was the entire plan. There was nothing else to the plan. We didn't know what kind of company we were going to start. So we just started dabbling in different things. We were opportunistic. Any idea that came up, any opportunity, we took it. One of those ideas led to what basically was the predecessor to WebDAM today, and the rest is history. My company, WebDAM, was acquired 1.5 years ago, so that was after about 7 years of bootstrapping the business. We were acquired, and we were acquired by Shutterstock, which is a New York-based company. They're one of the leading marketplaces for image and video content. So now I'm spending my time integrating the businesses, getting to know Shutterstock, continuing to grow WebDAM. And that's my story. So I'm really excited to be here. Thank you.
And why do you do what you do?
Why do I do what I do? Being a founder is definitely about being a lifetime learner. And that's really, really important to me. I think that's why I got into science in the first place. And I can honestly say I'm learning at the same rate today that I was 10 years ago when I started the business, and I love that.
Awesome. Ramona?
Great. So happy to be here. Thank you so much. My name is Ramona Ortega. I am the founder and CEO of My Money, My Future, also Mi Dinero, Mi Futuro. We are a platform for wealth management and personal finance aimed at the Latino community. So we make personal finance simple, easy, and affordable. We're launching our product at the end of November, so all of you will soon hear about it. But you can visit our website. We already have information. We have a blog and resources and a lot of content aimed at this community. I am by training a lawyer. I actually currently do securities litigation in New York City. So I have sort of a background in finance. I worked with the Securities and Exchange Commission in private equity. And so I do this work because before going to law, I actually spent almost a decade working at the intersections of human rights, race, and poverty. And so my sort of work was really focused on dealing with the racial wealth gap. And I was very passionate about that, having grown up here actually in the Bay Area, from very meager, sort of humble beginnings, and understanding very clearly that money is opportunity and money is very important in terms of wealth and how do you build wealth, right? And as many of you know, during the last recession, families of color lost almost 50% of their wealth. And that's really what sparked me. I think at that point I was like, I need to put my skills to work. And so initially I had decided I was just going to do a blog because I spoke to a lot of my colleagues and even colleagues that are lawyers in corporate law. And the women that I talked to were saying, oh, I don't know anything about finance. Oh, I don't deal with my money. I don't know how to manage it. I don't know what's in my 401k. And so the idea that sort of we don't know how to talk about money, and I was like, wow, we really need to get on this because it's so important for sort of economic security. And so initially I started the blog that launched in January of this year. And I got a lot of good reception around sort of what we were doing. And I figured, well, why not do something bigger than a blog, right? So you had LearnVest, you have fintech is exploding in terms of Silicon Valley and the tech world. And so we decided we're going to create a platform and an app that we would allow people to access a personal financial sort of advice, but very simply, right? So we make it uncomplicated. We take all the rhetoric out. We make it very easy to like click a button if you want to sort of save money or reduce your sort of debt or get an insurance, life insurance. So sort of like the planning around wealth, right? So that's where we're at now. I'm bootstrapping. So, we'll see how long that goes. I'm currently thinking about raising money this year so that I can leave my craziness of being a lawyer and doing this.
Mm-hmm. Cool. I'm Grace. I am with Watsi, which is a nonprofit startup. We're a website that lets anyone directly fund healthcare for people all around the world that can't afford to pay for it. So you can go on our website and see photos and read stories of, say, a 12-year-old girl from Nepal who needs life-saving heart surgery but can't afford the $1,500 it's going to take to get her that surgery, and donate as little as $5 to fund her care. A couple of things that make us different is that 100% of every donation funds healthcare for the patient, and we don't take a cut. And we're committed to total transparency. So we publish everything from our financials to our operations online. You can track every single dollar, down to screenshots from the transfers from our bank account to the hospital's bank account. We are a nonprofit, so we're funded a little bit differently. Like I said, 100% of donations on our website fund healthcare for patients, and so we fundraise in what we call philanthropic rounds to cover the cost of our operations. We're a small team in San Francisco. So we were actually the first nonprofit startup to go through Y Combinator. That was the first funding we ever got that enabled me and 2 other people to quit our jobs. We built Watsi as volunteers and do this full time. And now we're funded both by tips on the website that regular donors tack on to their donations to patients. We make about 7% of our total donation revenue in tips. And then as we scale, we also fundraise from technology investors, philanthropists, and foundations. But we really run Watsi more like a tech startup. So that's why we're in this room.
So as you guys can see, we have a very diverse panel, right? We may have all shared the same sex, the same gender, but we are very different in terms of our backgrounds and what brought us here today. I told the panelists before we came up here that I really wanted them to frame the conversations around, the introductions around what type of company are they building right now. Because when I first joined this industry, I just thought everyone was doing a startup, right? Everyone's trying to raise money. Everyone's trying to be the next biggest company and scale as fast as possible. But there are different ways of building businesses. So really quickly, if you guys can just, again, very shortly, reiterate each of you. Are you a tech company or a tech-enabled company, right? Secondly, are you a for-profit or a nonprofit? And then also, are you externally funded or personally funded, right? Just so we can frame the conversation as they're going, and maybe you can get some, oh, me too, I may want to choose that route as they're going to share their experiences.
Sure. So definitely a tech company, for profit. And as I mentioned, we bootstrapped the business for quite a long time until we were eventually cash flow positive and then acquired. So now we're part of a publicly traded company.
Great. So we're for profit. We're currently bootstrapping. We're tech enabled. So that's it.
We're a nonprofit. We built Watsi on the side as volunteers. We invested our own time and money. And now we're funded by other funders. But technically, we are profitable. We've done about $5 million for patients around the world, and we've raised about $1 million for operational funding. So
and I'm in your boat. And I'm in your boat too, Ramona. So just so you guys know, that's my position right now where I'm in my company. I'm bootstrapping. Again, I've wanted to frame the conversation so that you guys can understand that, again, there are different ways to go about this. So as you guys have built these great companies or in the process of building these great companies, what would you say have been the 3 biggest contributors to your success? So whether it be maybe your family and friends, whether it be a certain advisor, a certain strategy in which you're bringing your product to market, what are the 3 biggest advantages that you've had in your personal, growth as a female entrepreneur?
I'll start. So first, I would definitely say my upbringing. I have amazing parents, but more importantly than that, we had a roller coaster ride growing up. We had awesome times and we had pretty terrible times. My dad, he ran a software company when I was growing up and then went bankrupt, so lots of ups and downs through that process. And what I noticed was that my parents, they always had a sense of humor about it and had the best attitude. They were always very optimistic. And I think it just made me a very adaptable person. And made me be able to handle the ups and downs of startups. That would be one. The second is definitely I've had a great career and I've had great mentors and advisors, and they've really helped me to know me better. I think a lot of times people think mentorship and role models are about giving you advice and taking that advice, and oftentimes it's very contradictory advice, so it can be very confusing. But really what they've done for me is help me to know my strengths and what I would be good at, and that was really important. And third, and probably most importantly, is my life partner, who's also my co-founder. My husband and I co-founded the company together, and we've been working together for 14 years now. So we're exactly what you'd expect of a 50-50 partnership. We have 2 kids, so it's 50-50 at home and it's 50-50 at work. And we complement each other well because he's also our CTO. So I think our approach to everything in life is divide and conquer, and that has worked incredibly well. And I wouldn't be here doing this today and successful at being a mom and being an entrepreneur and being a CEO if it weren't for our partnership.
Awesome. All right, Ramona?
Let's see. There's so many things I think that make success really, or give you sort of the opportunity to even go towards success. And that I think one of them, and it's probably most important for me, is resilience. It's the ability to continue despite all sort of challenges that come in your way. And I think it's such a necessary factor as a founder, right? Because you're in sort of these places where everyone's challenging you, whether that's because you can't get funding or they're saying your idea is not good or whatever that sort of block is. I think that's really important to have the resilience and be sort of what we call anti-fragile, right? So being able to look it in its face and continue the next day. So I think that's really important. I think more importantly also is that I have a community of people that I rely on. And it's super important, especially in this work, that you have both different founders in your community, but you're also, my users are my community, right? So the people that I'm building the product for are people that I relate to. They're my sisters, they're my, my cousins, they're my friends, they're people in my community. So I know exactly who my user is. And I think that's also a motivating factor for me, is that I know that the product that I'm building is actually going to help people that I know and love. I think in terms of having sort of a sense of a mission, right? So, and that's a really important thing for us as a mission-driven company. It's not just the product. The product is external, but it's the mission and the ability to say that I'm not only creating a company that's going to generate jobs and wealth, but it's also going to have an impact over the long term on closing the racial wealth gap. And I think that it's a rare find where you can do both things in a very authentic way. And so I think that for me is a really huge factor in terms of what drives our success.
Those are all good ones. I think for me, the first one is probably that I'm trying to solve a problem that I've had myself, especially on sort of the donor side of Watsi. I grew up really interested in international issues and had a dad in Berkeley that would always, read the paper with me every morning and think about, what are the problems in the world and what is sort of your responsibility to be a part of making them better. And as I grew up and those turned into these online news stories I read, the problems were just as clear, but the solutions just got more complicated. I started, living in different countries and working with nonprofits. I took a quarter off of college and lived in DC and worked at a big humanitarian advocacy organization. And you just see how complicated proposed solutions can be to really simple problems. And I got to see how ineffective aid was and how donors, didn't really understand where their money was going. And there wasn't really a personal connection to people that we were trying to help, right? There's just sort of this anonymous group of victims somewhere else in the world. And that didn't really seem fair to me. It didn't seem like the world I was actually living in. So building Watsi and trying to create a more human approach to charity and giving people the opportunity to connect with someone in a really positive and dignified way is solving a problem that I myself have had, and making healthcare financing more efficient and using technology to connect people more directly is a problem that I have seen and been frustrated by. So I think that's one thing that has helped me on this adventure. I think a couple other things are just believing really deeply in what I'm working on. I think it would be crazy if in 100 years we haven't figured out how to use technology and the internet to solve real problems in the world. And I think that it's inevitable, and why not have it be us to be the ones to do it? Why not bring the future here a little bit faster? And I think having a belief like that enables me to do what's probably the third thing that's helped me out a little bit, which is just be unreasonably perseverant. In moments when it really seems like there is nothing that's going your way, just being able to sort of have this North Star of well, this is gonna happen sometime, and I would love to be a part of making it happen, and so why not stumble a few steps forward and see if anything gets clear in the meantime. And that's actually been a really important part of my job and all of our jobs at Watsi, is just believing in things when no one else does, and just not ever stopping. I think that's the only time we'll ever, Watsi could ever die, is if we stop trying.
Well, I appreciate the authenticity in each of your answers. And again, as you noticed, they were pretty different in some ways and also pretty similar. I think, it gets down to your why. Why are you doing this? Why are you going to bust your butt every single day, wake up, knock on all these doors to get this done? And so I really do personally believe that investing the time in figuring out your why before you embark on this journey is going to be really important. Because you may not know the how, but you know why you're doing it, and that's enough to get you up and get you going every day. So thanks for sharing.
Can I just add something
Please?
to that? I think the other thing is you grow and scale a team that I learned is if you don't know the why, you won't be able to empower large groups of people to get behind you. And that's something you see even large organizations struggling with, because not everybody is working on sort of these deep missions that it's very obvious we're trying to change the world with some of these ideas, and it can be hard to tap into that why and give people that deeper meaning. But I believe every human needs it to really put themselves and their passion behind an idea.
Yeah, for sure. So again, as all of you know, if you've been to any of the other sessions, they're extremely short, right? So I want to make sure we get to your questions. So I'm actually just going to ask two more, and then we're going to move straight into questions to make sure it's valuable for you all. One of them is about the men, right? There's several men in the room. I know I put out a tweet before this started, men, we want you here. It's important for you guys to be a part of this conversation, so thank you to those who decided to join. But regardless, I think the audience probably are wondering, and I know my Facebook friends are, because I also put out a post to them saying, if you were here, what would you want me to ask you guys? And without a doubt, most of the questions were about the interactions with men, right? And this is a male-dominated tech industry. So can each of you perhaps share an example of maybe a challenge that you had, or maybe even an ally, right? It depends on what your preference is on what you want to share, but how have men played a role in your evolution as a female founder? And I'm going to start with Ramona this time.
Well, it's interesting. We actually started the company with the idea that we were going to focus on Latinas, I mean, just women, and then we actually pivoted because I said, well, we need everybody in this. Everybody needs to build wealth, and it's going to be a positive sort of application for the whole community, not just women. We do think that our first adopters, though, will be women. To be honest, it's a male-dominated world, right? I mean, especially in finance. And so I've been in that world for a very long time. I think I've learned how to sort of navigate that and find my own in that, and that's really important to have that sort of sense of grounding. Basically know what you're talking about, know how to enter a room, enter a conversation, and not necessarily take it to heart when people don't talk to you, because that happens all the time, especially with women in finance. I think that you have to engage men. I mean, we've had some really good men that are part of our team, right? So our tech team is made up mostly of men, and I'm looking for a women coder. So please, if you're coding, come talk to me. I think more importantly, the struggles that I've actually had to deal with are people not understanding culturally where we're coming from, right? So not understanding my market, and not understanding sort of why would you do this just for Latinos, right? So that's probably where my challenge is more than dealing with sort of like men versus women. But I think that it's all part of the territory. You have to engage men and make them your allies for you, right? And there's going to be people that are going to get what you're doing and come on board, and then there's going to be people that just don't get what you're doing, and you shouldn't really waste your time in trying to convince them. That's sort of my...
What about you, Grace?
I have to say, I feel like I've been pretty lucky in that my journey so far has been characterized by really great guys and gals. I think part of the reason for that is that originally out of luck, and now I think a little bit more intentionally, I've managed to work my way into communities that are really explicitly and proactively thinking about this kind of stuff. So when Watsi got invited to join Y Combinator, I had no idea what Y Combinator was. Like, never heard of it before. I was like, cool, this is the way to work on Watsi full time. Sounds great. And when I started reading about it and reading about accelerators and technology, and this is this very like male-dominated world, I was pretty intimidated. I was like, oh man, I'm not prepared for that. I don't know what I should do differently or do the same. But I lucked into a really great community because YC is actually like doing an amazing job of both trying to be really progressive about making sure that they're getting applicants of all backgrounds, and also starting to talk a lot more proactively and put on events and sort of create opportunities for people, minorities maybe in tech, to connect with each other. And so especially in sort of the female founders area, I just managed to like plop down right into the middle of that, and that was a really great experience for me. And I think even seeking out communities and events like this one, right? Like you can sort of create an insulated space for yourself to feel a little bit less alone, because in the big picture, it really is. Like, I would say that's one thing that's been hard, not really in the micro environment of Watsi, but just being in tech, right? Like, you don't see a lot of women in positions that you may like aspire to, and it's not as easy to just latch onto someone and feel like, okay, I can sort of use you as my point of reference for all of these things that I want to do, and that can be really difficult. I think it's a huge unspoken advantage to be able to look out into a landscape and see people who look like you and have backgrounds like you, and so I think being mindful of the communities that you like proactively seek out can really help to have a more balanced, really pleasant experience, which I fortunately have.
All right, Jody, you want to wrap us up with this one?
Sure. Well, first I'll say that I've worked in male-dominated industries my whole life, and there's been ups and downs with that as well. And I think I learned sort of firsthand some of the challenges that come with being a minority in your industry. So when I started the company, it became even more important. That was part of my why. I wanted to be part of changing the conversation of bringing more women into technology. I was used to working in male-dominated fields, but I wanted to see if there was something I could do to help close that gap. So what I noticed quickly is how many men jumped on to support that. And I thought that was really cool. And I think it's incredibly important. Men are definitely part of that conversation, a big part of the conversation and a big part of the solutions, as well as women. And so one of the things we did at my company is we formed a group called Women of WebDAM. Wow. And it's awesome. I'm really proud of the group and the kinds of things we do, but what I was surprised by is how quickly there were like several guys who were like, hey, can we join WOW? And they were really into it, and they support it, and they love it, and on the days we're having a WOW meeting, we're all wearing our t-shirts, and they're like all excited about it and wondering what we're doing and up to, and so I love seeing that kind of support, and I think it brings the right energy to a tech company, especially an enterprise tech company, because there's very, very few women in enterprise tech. So I think it makes a really big difference, and I'm also proud to say that the WebDAM, my company, is now over 40% women, which I think is pretty awesome. It's pretty cool.
Wonderful. Can I add one thing?
Yeah, one more thing.
Because I know you had a question about why a female panel and sort of why a diversity in tech conference, right? And I think that it's really important that we acknowledge that these kinds of spaces sort of externalize and say, yes, there are structural issues that we face, right? And sometimes we are doing our work and it's not acknowledged, right? So I think that these kinds of spaces, a female panel or a tech inclusion conference says, yes, we recognize that there are structural limitations and challenges that particular groups face. And I think that recognition is really important, because otherwise we're struggling individually, thinking sometimes that it's our company or it's me or et cetera. And so getting that recognition and then being able to identify the problems and coming up with solutions is sort of why this is important.
Thank you for adding that, Ramona. Really appreciated that comment, by the way. I want to be respectful of you all in the audience, because I'm sure you have questions. So while you guys are getting those ready to go, I don't know how this works in other rooms. So if there's a microphone. One last thing from each of you. What are your top 1 or 2 resources, like actionable things that they could either read, or they could be a part of a community online, or they can attend a conference? Like, what are those things that like literally change your life? Like, and maybe if it's specific to females, maybe if it's not, but does anyone want to start? And if you haven't been paying attention this entire time, this would be the time too. Who has it? Bingo, go.
Well, I'll say one group that I really enjoy in the Bay Area is Women 2.0. I think they're doing amazing things. I think the events that they hold are really innovative and interesting, and I love the diversity of the group of people that come together as well.
Women 2.0, got that down. Next.
Latino Startup Alliance, full disclosure, I'm on their board, so you should definitely join them. But also, do your homework, put Google Alerts. I have a Google Alerts on all of the things that I need to know about fintech, tech, females, diversity. So just, you should have at least an hour a day dedicated to your sort of research.
So not to bring it back to Y Combinator again, but I went to the Y Combinator Female Founders Conference this year for the first time. And it was amazing. Like, such a diverse group of people at all stages of like extremely successful companies to ideas to whatever. And it was just a really cool event. Like, everyone there was just there to sort of exchange ideas and meet. And I still talk to people that I met there. So apply to go to that for sure.
And they also have a Facebook group, Female Founders Conference, that I love.
Oh, nice. Awesome.
Yes. And for me, real quick, I love Women of Color Tech in the Bay Area. There's also Black Tech Week coming out of Miami, and then also Focus 100. They were a conference, but they've moved to an online platform. So those are 3 great organizations as well. So on to the questions. Does anyone have any questions? Don't be shy.
On the flip side of addressing structural disadvantages, I'm interested to hear how each of you or some of you are confronting your privileges and trying to be honest about it, and if you are, how that's influencing your leadership in your organizations.
So the question is confronting our own privileges and then utilizing that knowledge or that awareness to maybe create our own organization.
I can start. Yeah, I mean, I think my most dominant one is that, I grew up in an incredibly privileged environment, right? I had access to all of the basic things I needed to succeed: education, like a safe place to stay. I never worried about food. And I think I also was sort of raised on this belief that is also sometimes born out of privilege, which is that you can do whatever you want to do. Just do what makes you happy. If you have an idea, go for it, right? There's no sort of baseline, here are the things you need to make sure that you can take care of or bring back, for our family or a wider group of people. And I think even the mental space to have the luxury of graduating college and thinking oh, what am I interested in? What am I moved by, right? How do I want to spend my time? I think that's sort of an unbelievable privilege that I think about every day, and we try and think about at Watsi, especially as we grow and as we are growing our team and hiring, making sure that we are getting opportunities to work with us in front of, people from all backgrounds, right? Education levels, job experience levels. Because we've done a pretty decent job of that so far, and we found that it's one of the things that really makes our team stronger, is that every single person on the team is bringing a completely different perspective and views the world through a different lens. And it makes us a lot better, I think, as an organism.
If there's nobody else jumping at the question, we'll move on. I think it was a really important question. I'm just going to answer it really quickly in relation to, if you guys want to check out the work that the K-Poor Center LPFI SMASH program is doing, they do a lot of research around unconscious bias, right? Even our own, right? And the privilege we bring into situations, and then actually giving you techniques that you can utilize when you're hiring, when you're managing people, the kind of organizational structure. But I just went to an event they had at Google. It was phenomenal. So again, it's LPFI and their SMASH program. Does a lot of research around that. Yes, next question? Yes, right in the front. I think there's a microphone. There you go.
What is one piece of advice that you would like to share with younger generation of entrepreneurs? And then my other question is, how do you balance your life? I'm a student, an entrepreneur, and a coder, so I want to see what advice I can get on that.
Yeah, I can take that. I think the piece, so I loved what you said about perseverance. I totally agree. I, for a long time, called it stubbornness and naivety, which I think equals perseverance. And there's the things you never get back, so it's something you have being a young entrepreneur. And it was the same attitude we had. It's the reason we bootstrapped for 7 or 8 years, because there was no other outcome that was going to be acceptable to us except success. And so we kept shifting the business until we got success. And that's just, that was important to us, and so we weren't going to quit. And I think I always tell people, if they're going to start a company, to carve a good 5 years out of your life. And everyone's like, 5 years? And the reality is, you have to have time for failures, and there's going to be a lot of them and bumps in the road, but it's all learnings, and it'll make you a better entrepreneur.
How many times would you say you guys pivoted, or?
We had one really large pivot, but we were shifting within the market we were in quite a lot. I mean, half a dozen.
That's normal.
Half a dozen.
Don't freak out. Anyone else jumping at that question?
I would just say that it's really important to have a sense of humility. You're going to be very vulnerable, and you have to have enough ego, though, to be vulnerable and confident, right? So, because people are going to attack your idea, you're going to attack you sometimes, and so. But being able to sort of withstand that, I think is very important. And you'll move around that table many times.
All right. Next question, right over here. We got time for 2 more, so think about it.
Mm-hmm. So as a male-dominated industry, I think that can also help generate male-dominated workplace cultures in terms of long hours or policies that aren't really conducive to women raising families. And I'm really interested in how women in tech and women founders can kind of help combat that workplace culture style.
Yeah, I mean, I think that really resonates with me, given that I have a young family. I actually shared that culture. I was like, work hard, and that's it. Kind of ended there. And I didn't even really understand the concept of work-life balance when I started the company, because I always did things that I was very passionate about and that I got so much joy out of. I couldn't imagine why I'd want to do anything else other than work. And then I had my first baby, and I was like, wow, this is a real thing, and it's a real problem. And we got to figure this out. And I'll say on the privilege side, like especially early in the business, I did have the privilege of bringing a young child to work, bringing a nanny to work, doing all of the things that Marissa Meyer got a lot of heat about. And I think there's trade-offs when you're a founder. And that was the thing that I was able to do. But now that we're a more mature company, and I'm seeing lots of women come in and having babies, super sensitive about it. We have a room dedicated to breastfeeding, a mother's room, and we're really sensitive to the needs of mothers. I think it's something you look for in the companies that you go to work at, right? I think that's why we're having these conversations as well. It's really important. I don't think one person can go in and change the culture of a company. I think as a group we can, hopefully, as a society in Silicon Valley we can, but I think that's why you have to really look at the management team, the leadership team. Is there diversity on that team? It makes a big difference.
I have a 14-year-old son, single mother, and put myself through law school and started a tech company and managed to figure out when he's coming home by tracking him on my phone. And in terms of work-life balance, I'm a litigator, so really there's none, and so this is just an extension of that craziness. Although, you take time to find a place to take care of yourself. I think that's really essential, however you do that. I think I'm one of those people who's like, look, we've been doing this. My mother worked, my grandmother worked with 9 kids in the field. This is easy compared to that. So I think that there's a lot of people who have been having families and working, and so it's just how do we sort of institutionalize it to make it less hard for us to do that, right? I think that's what you're speaking to. But I think at the end of the day, we find ways, particularly when we find ways to do it. And that's what's really important. That's where our resilience comes in, and the ability to sort of take on new projects and take risk.
Yeah, I would just add really quickly, I do think it's important to say something, right? I think there's a part, you've co-founded your company with your husband, right? So obviously there's a bit of empathy built into the structure already because you guys are partners in this. But I think as a person who's worked at very male-dominated institutions for a while as well, I do think that it can kind of eat you alive sometimes, and you can start feeling like you're crazy. Like, am I crazy? Like, I'm pretty sure they keep asking them to go to lunch and never ask me to go, or I'm pretty sure they never asked me to go play soccer, but I was a Division I athlete. It's just like they don't even think about it. And I think, your work takes up such a big part of your life, right? You want to be seen. You want to be heard. You want to be valued. We all want that as human beings. So I do think there needs to be a bit of courage involved in having conversations with people and, meeting them where they are. So, because I think if you can come off very aggressive or abrasive sometimes, people shut down, right? It's human psychology. So it's also about reading the person and meeting them where they are, but having the conversation. And just like the young woman pointed out with her first question, a lot of these things go, happen unconsciously, right? They just don't know. We're raised in a certain way. You're just not as aware. So how do we start making people more aware, right? As we try to become aware. And wouldn't that be nice? All right, question in the back. And I think if we get through this one quickly, and maybe you want to take it? Sure. Grace?
So this is
the great unknown.
This is actually a question about timing. And for so many women, they want to be entrepreneurs, but they take so much more time to feel prepared, to get everything ready. Their businesses are often more successful because they do work so hard before they think it's time. What was the turning point for you? How did you know you were ready to be a founder? Was there something that happened? Was there an attitude change? Did someone lift you up? What was that moment?
Okay, this is a question I'm very happy to take because this was like my pivotal moment. I spent my entire young life just waiting to be ready. I was like, well, something's gonna happen, right? And I'm just gonna know, now I have all the knowledge and wisdom and expertise I need to do something useful and meaningful in the world. And I think what I realized is that that time never comes. You will never be more ready to do whatever you're gonna do than right now. Like, that was probably the biggest learning that I've had. And I'm still not ready. I still don't feel ready for anything that I do. My job changes every 6 months, and everything that I've just gotten good at in the last half a year is suddenly no longer useful, and I need to like figure out how to do something else. But I think it's painful and it's very uncomfortable, but getting over the hump of like waiting to feel like something has clicked in you and you are ready is probably the best thing that you will ever do.
Awesome. And we're going to end on that note. I know I told you guys it was short. If you have any other questions, guess what? They may be here. Yes, they're going to be here. So be brave, come up, have a conversation. Thank you so much to the panelists. Thank you so much, you guys. A round of applause.